Hello, welcome to the Everest Point Music Tech video. I know that running sound for a lot of people can be quite intimidating, but I'm hoping that this video will give you all the information that you need to be able to use our sound system. And I think that having good sound has been a really great way to support the students' performances. And I want to encourage everybody to, it's a long video, but once you have all the information, it shouldn't be too hard to try and incorporate it into your classes and into your performances. And I tried to make it as good of a resource as I could so that you have all the information you need to be able to run sound. So a lot of this is with me flipping the camera the other way and giving you a kind of a first person view of how everything is put together on our sound system and the church's sound system. And without further ado, I guess we'll just jump in. All right, so right before you can see this layout of a sound system. So I wanted to kind of give you an overview of the chain of how all this information goes through the sound system and eventually ends up at the speaker as sound. It's really important to know this because if you just plug all these things together and then just do it because you know it's supposed to go there instead of knowing how it works together, if there's a problem, you won't know how to fix it. But by understanding why these things are put together in the way that they are, it will give you some information so that if something does go wrong or a cord gets unplugged or things like that, you can then go back and fix it, or find where in this chain something went wrong. So first and foremost, in this chain, we have our sound that's either coming to us from a microphone or from maybe an iPhone, things like that. Specifically with microphones, though, it's really important to know that we can set the sensitivity of a microphone. So in a system, you can turn up what's called the gain of the microphone. So that's basically saying that we can get more information from that microphone, or it's going to be more sensitive to the sounds around it, pick up more of them, and send more of that information back to wherever that signal is going. If your microphone is too sensitive, you'll encounter something called clipping. So clipping is basically where the sound is too much information coming through. It's capping out and it makes everything sound fuzzy. That's because the gain is too high. So in a lot of our situations with microphones, whether they're the wireless ones or the wired ones, different things, we have to be aware of the gain. And a lot of people think that the gain and the volume are the same thing, but the gain is basically saying, microphone, be this sensitive to the sounds around you, and we want a good amount of that sound, not too little, not too much, so that we can turn up the volume and it sounds good. If our gain is too low, we won't get any information, and we're going to have to crank the volume up, and then we're going to get a different kind of fuzzy noise, which is just the fuzziness of the bass of the sound system, like the electric sound in it. And that means you've turned it up way too high, and you don't want to do that either, right? So our gain kind of should be in a sweet spot. If you notice that your students are talking really loud, you'll probably want to turn the gain on their microphones down, because they're already giving you enough information that if the gain is lower, you're not going to have to worry about that. But if let's say they're really soft-spoken, right, you may have to turn up their gain so that you can hear them, and the microphone will be sensitive enough to pick up their sound. So that's really important because that affects this whole chain of things, right? So we have our microphones. We can also get sound through like an iPhone, an aux cord that would plug into our mixer. So this is the next kind of step in the process. We have our mixer, a soundboard, something that's going to alter these sounds that we have and put them in a way that we want to, so that they'll be sent back to the speaker and sound nice. The church has a physical soundboard, that's their mixer, and our school sound system is a digital mixer. Either way, it's taking these sounds, turning up the gain, it's allowing you to change the volume, to add music, to add effects, and make this sound however you think it should be. And then from the mixer, it gets sent ultimately to the speakers, but this is also something that's really important to know about sound systems, as we have different levels of power in these cables that are being sent. All right, so this graph kind of shows you the sequence of events of getting the information from the microphone to a speaker in a power sort of way. So when we first get information from the microphone, all it's doing is converting the sound waves into electrical information. And that level of information, the level of power that's going through that line is very, very small. And so what needs to happen is that level of information needs to be amplified so that computers, mixers, and things like that can use it. So we have something called a preamp, which goes from the microphone in between to whatever it's going to be sent to mix the sound. And it turns into just something called line level, which is kind of our basis of information. Once it's been mixed, we need something that's going to make that sound powerful enough to make the speaker move in the way it needs to amplify the signal. So once we've mixed it, it goes through a power amplifier, and then it turns into a speaker level of sound. So the big thing to note about this is I can't directly plug in a microphone into a speaker if there's nothing to amplify the sound, especially because it goes through two different level changes of power. And without those, you would just get nothing. Thankfully, our sound system has an amplifier built into our speakers, which is really nice because that means that we don't have to worry about this process. But if you're using the church's system or another system, this is the general way that the power kind of goes through. This is also a graph to kind of show you. So if you're using instruments or a microphone, they go through a preamp, and then it goes into the mixers, which then gets sent through amplifiers and then to the speaker. And this is just a way to show another level of these levels of power that are going through these different parts of the sound system. Let's say you're trying to do something crazy like we did with our show, then for you'll have to make sure that if something went wrong in this chain, you have to know that this is a part of that chain, basically. Most of the time, you're not even going to need to think about it because it is not normally, something that we do, but there is a level to where it's the microphone, it's leveled up then at the mixer, and then it needs to be leveled up again to send it to the speaker. And without that, if you're just trying to put things together, you won't know why it's not working. Or let's say something goes wrong from the power amplifier to the speaker. If you don't know that exists, then you won't know how to fix it. So these are the ways that we finally get to our sound. It's nice, it's amplified, and we have our wonderful sound sent to the whole room. So this is another overview of a sound system I wanted to show you just in case it's easier to see visually. You can see that the red is the input, and then the green arrows are the output to the speakers. So you have your microphone to your mixer to your power amplifier to your speakers. That's the basis of it. The mixer has a preamp in it already most of the time to boost that sound to the level that it needs to be sent to the amplifier, and then it's a whole thing. So that is how everything kind of plugs together. All right, so I figured we'd start with the sound system with it out in the box like this. So typically these two speakers get stored on top of this Rolly sound system here. It's a very nice box for it all. And then we also have the mics that are stored separately, but these mics get stored inside there. So, but I figured I would start with the back of the speaker, and this one is set up and on, so we'll jump over here. But the way that this works is we have our power cord down here, lovely on off. And then as you can see, there's two inputs. So I have this one with the gain turned all the way down, and then this one is a little bit over 1. And this is the end of this cable. So this is I'll pull it out. You have to push this button to pull it out. This is the male side of the XLR, and you can see how it just goes and gets plugged right back in. And then this cord wraps all the way around and goes over here. This is the female side. You could theoretically clip these together. So the male side to the female side. So if you're in a desperate situation and it's not long enough, you can clip these together. It does degrade the sound, but for the level of what we do at Everest Point, our sound quality isn't that needing that much high quality. So as you can see, we have our mic plugged in, goes through to the cord, gets plugged into here. This is on, and then this is our master volume, and then this is our gain for each mic. So I could have 2 mics going into this one speaker, and they could both have a different like sensitivity. And then this would be the master volume. So if I turn this down, you can see the plus decibels. So this is 0, nothing's happening to it. This is negative, right? And then we're going into positive. For most of what we do, you're gonna wanna be in the positive level. And it's meant so that you can really, if you're not going to play music or have a lot of mics, this is the basic setup. Plug this into our wired microphones, and then it's really plug and play. The other really fun thing about this is that we have an output, so you can take one of these XLRs and plug them into here and daisy chain the speakers together so that they are playing the same thing. But you'll have to change the gain and make it sound good, like otherwise one speaker will be quieter than the other. So you have to kind of fiddle with these until it sounds even from both sides. So these speakers are very, very nice to have for events where we just need to be able to amplify someone's voice. You can use the XLR. We have an adapter that will go to an aux cord, and you can play music through these speakers. They're very versatile, and they'll just kind of play whatever you put through them. One of the things to think about for these speakers are feedback. So before, we've tried to put these speakers in behind the person that's speaking in them. And what happens is the sound goes through the big speaker back into the mic, and then it loops. And that's where you get that really weird squeaky noise. So a big way to prevent that is just to put these speakers in front of where the microphone would be. So this mic would be behind the speakers in a performance setting. Like even right now, I can speak into it. It's not having feedback, even though I'm really close. But there's the potential there. And with the other microphones, they are much more sensitive. So it's important to set it up in a way that just minimizes feedback, and kind of gives you the best outcome, because it's you have to like turn everything down, and it just kind of disrupts everything when it happens. So, yeah. All right, now we're getting into our lovely sound system. So these speakers with the stands and the microphones can be a separate sound system from this entire box. But if you're doing theater, or if you're doing anything with more than 2 microphones, you're gonna have to use this. It's very helpful, very, very useful, but it is definitely something that can be intimidating at first before you kind of know how to use it. So we're gonna open the box and get going. Okay, so this is our box opened up. We have the lid, the front piece, and then we also have a little door that goes in the back here. As you can see, there's a cord that gets plugged in, so that's where the power is. And then back in the back, we had a bunch of the bigger cables stored, so they just kind of get tucked back here. And you can see all of these antennas are receivers. So if I look at this front end, there's a few things to note. First off, power. Right here, I can turn this on. Flashing lights, lovely. And then we have our drawer. This has a bunch of extra stuff in it. So earlier when I was saying we have this aux to XLR, I'll pull it out and you can see the end here. So these 2 XLR pieces. One of these is meant to be right and left. You could just use this, plug one side into the right speaker, one side into the left speaker. In this drawer, lots of things. These are the bags for these microphones that are the Shure microphones. So these guys, they get stored right in these bags. And then in here we have a ton of other cables. So some of these may be of use to you, some of them are not. If you need any of the user guides, these are also in here. But the majority of stuff that we have and how it all kind of goes together is like a lot of this stuff is extra. So the bigger things that are in here, sometimes we have some of the cords in here. We have this router that we got from Goodwill, lovely, lovely. And then the way that this is set up is mostly already done for you, which is really nice. So we have our lovely input. So what happens is we have our microphones, which I'll show you in a second. They send a signal to these receivers. There's 4 of them and they're labeled. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down through. So we have 16 available receiving ports, and the microphones have the same group and channel number as this spot on the receiver. So what's nice is that it's already all set up for you. There's nothing that you really need to do or think about with these microphones. They are just set up. And the sound comes to the receiver. So this wirelessly gets the sound, and then all of these cords plug into the back of these receivers, and they plug into the specific spots on here. So like this 3 should go around and be connected up there to that 3, if that makes sense. It goes up, it gets connected, and then this is our big mixer. So this is the guy that powers our sound system. So if you have done any sort of live sound or have seen like a soundboard, this basically allows us to have a digital soundboard without actually owning a soundboard, which is really nice in the sense of, especially for smaller things, we can connect an iPad to it and it is very straightforward to use. So let's say I had this all set up. I have my mics, they're all connected and turned on. They're sending the signal through here. This basically allows us to mix that signal however we want, and then it comes out through these 2 ports. So you have a main right and a main left. You could plug into one. We had to do that for the show, and it was just stereo sound. If you had specific sound where you're like, this needs to only come from the right or left side, you would have to plug in both of these. And so in a perfect world, right, you plug this into your right speaker, this into your left speaker, and then it just sends the sound how it's supposed to through both of those speakers. We didn't do that for the show, but that is how it's meant to be used. And then the other thing is there's also all of these additional spots. So like, let's say you wanted to plug in an aux cord into one of these. You have so many extra spots to put in outside of these patch cords to put more into the sound system to mix it. So that's there. And you could really plug anything into these. These 2 are the main outputs. We also have, these are line inputs. So if you had like a guitar or something specific, you could do that. And then this would be so you could hear it without it playing through these 2 speakers, so you could plug in a headphone with an adapter. And then I think this adjusts the headphones. So you could listen to it if it's not going through a speaker, but still hear everything, which is kind of a nice thing that they have. So in our performance, we took the sound from the sound system. So what it was gonna output into the speakers, we also plugged in to a camera, I think using this headphone port. So this would also send out the sound, and then you could turn up and down the gain. So we use this cord, so you can see this one has a right and a left. We just plugged in one, so it was a mono sound. And then this part, I believe, plugged into the camera, and we were able to use the sound from the sound system in our video, which is really, really cool. So if you have a professional camera and you're wanting to get the sound quality that you would get from the sound system, that is a great way to do it. This goes out, it's another little signal thing. And the bigger part that's cool about this is we have even more. So the bigger thing is we have this Ethernet spot, and then we have different options here. So you can see we have Ethernet is the far, and then I can click it in one, client Wi-Fi, and then wireless access point. So what this means is right here, this whole system operates through either an Ethernet cable or Wi-Fi. I can plug in an Ethernet cable, plug that into my computer, download the software, and have the soundboard on my computer through that option. I can also turn this on. It has Wi-Fi that's sent. It has, it's gonna be called XR18 something something. There's a bunch of numbers with it. But that's the specific Wi-Fi. If I connect to that, and I also have the app or software downloaded, you can also do it on an iPad, then I can control it from there. And then lastly, this means that you're gonna plug with an Ethernet cable, plug it into our router to boost the Wi-Fi signal, and then still connect through Wi-Fi to this system. So if you need more information than that, you can look up I think it's Behringer. I don't even know how to say this. I'm not super familiar with it, but Behringer, this XR18, if you look this up, there are a ton of videos on how to just use this system. But this is the powerhouse behind our sound system. So if we need to switch anything up, you can look, there's tons of videos on just using the system, but I wanted to explain it in a way that I felt was easier. So these other things, these are for MIDI. I don't imagine we'll ever use MIDI. There's this USB and this personal monitoring, so I believe that's for in-ears. So anyway, I don't picture us using that in our school. However, those are options on this as well. So it does a ton of things. It's a really great system for where we're at as a school. With that being said, I'll jump into the mic packs. All right, so these are our mic packs. As you can see, this is labeled 1. Currently it has no batteries in it. I will put batteries in it in a second, but I want to kind of give you a layout of it. So we got our clip. We got our mute, unmute. You hold this to turn it on. We have the spot where we can plug in the microphone part of it, and then this little screen with some menu options. Additionally, you can see where we put the batteries. There's this sync button, and then this is kind of nice. So this has -10 decibels and then 0. So if for some reason these are being too sensitive, or they're not, you need it to collect less sound and be less sensitive, you can flip it down to the -10. So after turning on by holding this top button, you can see our microphone. So you can see the battery level. We have it locked. I'll show you how to unlock it, and then you can see the group and channel number. And if we look up here, number 1 is group 1, channel 8. Bada bing, bada boom, perfect. If, per se, you wanted to get more of these, you can order them on the website. They were like $35 when I looked at them, because we looked at ordering more of them, and 2 of ours are broken. So if you got a new one, you wouldn't need to change any of these because they're already set up. And honestly, I wouldn't change them because it's a whole thing of why they're the numbers that they are. I would just get the microphone or the belt pack and then change it to be specifically these 2 numbers, and it will send the signal directly to that receiver, and it would be that number. So if one of them breaks, there's no need to like mess with any of this. You would just set the microphone to the numbers that are there. The other thing that is important to know is if I click and hold both of these, that lock goes off. What the lock does is it keeps the person who's wearing the belt pack from being able to unmute and mute their mic or mess with it in any way. It locks it. So let's say you're sitting down, you accidentally press it, you can't do that when it's locked. So for our performance, we locked all of them so that the kids wouldn't have the opportunity to accidentally walk on with their mic unmuted. And it would just be something that they couldn't control. So belt pack, pretty simple. We have these headsets, and we also have these flush toned microphones. I forget what they're actually called. I'm not an expert in any of this, but I know how it works. So anyway, these plug in right here. This button is important. So if you try and pull it out without pressing this little black button, they will, it won't want to come out, and you'll probably end up breaking it. So very important. The button goes in the back, and you can plug it in. And then for these headsets, it's pretty cool because they go over like this. So you almost look like a little pilot, but it's pretty simple. The other thing is with these, we had a lot of trouble with they breathe directly on these, and then they're so sensitive, so you almost want them to be far away and like out of the way of their mouth, so that if they were breathing on it, you wouldn't get all the air, basically, but it's close enough to be able to hear them. And with some of the little kids' heads, it's almost like they're too small, so you'd have to like you have to bend it weird, but they work. They're pretty stable. They have this nice pop filter, which kind of helps with some of that extra like air that comes out. And then they just hook under like this. So these are really good if you're switching microphones, versus the other ones are really good for performance where, you know, they're not, you don't want to be seen, they're not switching out of them, or they could just wear one, switch, like unplug and plug in. This would have to be muted for that, but that would work. So, yeah, and then the other option are these lovely flesh toned ones. And so you'll just plug it in the back. Same thing, goes in. This one's kind of bent all awkward, but we put it around your ear. You bend it. The big thing with this is if you put this here over your mouth, you're gonna get so much breath in this microphone. Realistically, you want it to be like an inch away, because this allows it to be close enough, but you're not in any of your breathing kind of pathway with this. So the nice part about these is you can bend these wires to a certain extent without hurting them. So for a lot of the younger kids, we just made that bend smaller, and then went through, and you can see how I would just tape it here. For some of them, we taped it behind their ear if they needed it, and then we would tape it along their neck so that they were pulling it with their head. If they were pulling it at all, it would be on their neck, which is a little easier than pulling from their ear. This would go down through their shirt or whatever they're wearing, and the belt pack would be tucked behind them. One of the big things that I told the students was that it's really important to be careful with this part of the belt pack, because if you sit on this bends, it's gone. And we don't want that. That happened to some of these microphone parts. The belt pack is kind of fine, but then we're out another one of these. We have some extras, but I don't picture that they'll last forever. So what's nice is also you can order more of these from the website. It's just on the box and everything, so you can look this up. It's this GTD audio, and then it just has to be the same, like the model has to work with the receivers that we have. And I'll show you in just a second the number for our receivers, so you could reference that if you have to look for the microphones. So you can see up here, the receiver is G787. So if you were gonna look on their website to buy anything that would work with this system, it has to work with this receiver. And a lot of the mic packs that they still have work with that kind of model. So one of the things to note about these belt packs is that we store them without the batteries in them, because you can see this belt pack is busted because one of the batteries like corroded and then it broke and we can't fix it. So unless you can fix that, this one is a goner. So we're storing all of them that way. 7 and I think 9, if I remember correctly, are busted. 9 has a busted screen, and then the other one was just corroded. Along with that, in this box, we have just a bunch of batteries. We have all of these stored. I think 9 was the one with the busted screen. I can't remember. It still functions. You just can't see what you're doing. So you have to kind of test it the other way around and make sure that it's going through. You can see we have a bunch of other types of microphones here, or just extras. So like this would be, I think, a clip-on lapel. We have the pop filters. We have more of the other ones. So lots of options, which is nice. And then if for some reason they break, things like that, you can use a different type of microphone. We can order more. They're really accessible. All right, so I figured I would show you next how to find the software that works with our audio interface. So if you can see, I just looked up the Behringer Audio XR. You can see how this is, I think, the exact one that we have.
Expensive. Anyway, and if you go to the website, you can click on it, and see this is their website, and you can see that there's different models of it. They have different ones with a different amount of inputs. And ours is the XR18. So if I go over to software, then you're just gonna pick which one works with yours. So for me, I'm a Mac person, so I'm gonna download the Mac one. And then if I open it, here we go. Perfect. So it's literally that simple. This is kind of how everything looks. This is how it looked on ours. And what's nice is you can resize this. So if I go to, I'm gonna do fit window width, which is kind of perfect because I can see everything. So what's nice about this is we have your computer. You can use a mouse. If you had an iPad, there would be an app instead of a software to download, but it's very, very straightforward to use, and I'll show you on the iPad as well. But just in case you need to know how to use it on the PC, this is how it works. And then everything on the iPad is it's laid out a little differently, but it has the same capabilities. And what's nice about that is you can walk around and hear the sound and edit it from there. So what's nice is if we click, I think it's in setup, connection. So if I go over to client Wi-Fi, and then I have to go and actually literally find the Wi-Fi. So it should be this XR18. So if I go down here, it's not a very strong Wi-Fi. So we're just gonna connect to that. Connected, unsecure. So all it needs to say is connected. And then what's nice is now you can click on this model. So I went to settings, connection, and then this model here, you'll click connect. And then what's nice about this is for the PC, you can click to either have what was saved on the actual device sync with your PC, or you could set it up on your PC and then send it to the system so that it would switch. So you can pick. So I'm going to click mixer to PC, and then what we did for the musical will come up, and you can see how we named all of them and got it set up for that. So, and how everything's switching on the screen. So awesome. It is totally set up, and you can see pretty much everything is muted on here, which is nice. As you can see, if I use my fingers to scroll, I'm gonna move these up and down, which is cool. So for us, we were using number 1, and I can unmute it. If I unmute it, this is our number 1 pack. So we're unmuted in the system. We need to unmute over here. And then if I talk into this up here, you'll see how I'm getting signal through that little sound area. It's reading the fact that there's signal coming through, and that's what you want to see. So if I had this system plugged into a speaker, you would hear me talk through this belt pack into the system. And you can see there's also special effects. This is a bunch of other like digital audio stuff. The basics of it is that you have all of these faders, and these are just individual microphones, and then you can mute them. And then you can fade it up and down. We have a master volume over here. You have buses and special effects and a bunch of things you can do, but it's just as simple as these. So if you have these and you have your master volume, that is all you basically need to get started with these mics. They're very simple in that way, which is really nice. So another thing to mention is because the system primarily operates either through Ethernet cable or Wi-Fi, what we did was we plug this in and it boosted the Wi-Fi signal, because if you're going just based off of a Wi-Fi connection and then you walk away, or the system, it just is lagging, you can't change any of the sound that way. And for our production, that was just too much of a risk. We had times where the sound was, we had a bunch of feedback, and it was when this Wi-Fi cut off and we couldn't undo it during practice, thankfully. So the best option for running this sound system is an Ethernet cable plugged into a computer, I would say. And outside of if you're doing something simple to where you can kind of set it up and go. For a musical, at least for what we found, the Wi-Fi signal was just not as reliable enough to be able to handle the amount of microphones that we were needing to adjust and all those sorts of things. So if you were doing a bigger production, we borrowed an Ethernet cable. I don't think the school has one, but I'm sure that they could get a big one, or like just one that's kind of long enough so that you can be far enough back to hear. That was something that was kind of annoying, was that our Ethernet cable wasn't very long, so you were tied to wherever we had to plug in the box, and it just was less nice than if you had the point of the iPad is that you can walk around and you can hear, see if it's too loud, see if the mics are coming in at the volume that you want compared to the music and things like that. And if you're tied to the box, then you can't do that. So it is the best of all the worlds if you can have a longer Ethernet cable that can plug in, or what you could do is potentially plug in a long Ethernet cable into this and be able to sit kind of next to this if you need an iPad. Because the other thing is using the computer with the mouse isn't as fun. But it works if you need to. So really depends on what the goal of your production is. If it's simple, then all this stuff is you could do the iPad, and it really shouldn't matter too much. But if you're incorporating music, I would lean towards using a computer and plugging it in with the Ethernet cable. So, all right, more random information for you that is just helpful to know. So these XLR cables are very nice. They're soft drop, so you don't have to be they're pretty durable, but there is an important way to wrap them up that is different than most cables. So most people, when you think of wrapping a cable, you'll just, wrap around your arm, it's fine. For these, the way that they're stored is pretty important because it allows, whatever way it sits, if it gets warm a little bit, this plastic kind of warps and then it just wants to lay that way, or it can get kinked. And you kind of want to store it nicely so that they last for a long time. If you just kind of throw them in there, it is fine for a day, but if you're storing it for longer than that, you really want to put it away nicely. So what happens is, the way that you wrap a cord is you're going to go around the first way, and then you're going to twist it back on itself the other way. So forward, and then I would twist this like in on itself. Hopefully that makes sense. If you've never wrapped cords this way, this is so that if you wrap it correctly, you can literally throw it out and it goes straight. And if it needs to lay straight, then it's that way it doesn't have any weird bumps or warps in it, so that it's like not wiggly on the ground. And you can tape it down easily if you need to like tape it to the floor or things like that. And then it just prevents it from getting kinked and getting kind of like destroyed in that way. So it does a lot to protect the cable. And it's a simple thing that helps keep our sound stuff nice. I also just wanted to point out, on this box, it has a lot of information. So obviously we have our receiver here. That is these things that are all put in there. And we don't have these wireless handheld mics. We only have the packs. If the school wanted to get some, they are the same sort of thing, where the channel, all that stuff is the same on here, and you would just set it to that to match the receiver number, and then bada bing ba boom, you're good to go. So also I emailed this company asking about what audio packs, if we need to order more. I thought we're gonna have to order a bunch of them. We found them all, but they were saying they were just really helpful. So if you're ever at a point where you're like, I don't know how to use this, or I don't know what is what for this thing, then you can email them, and they got back to me really quickly. Alrighty, so in the auditorium, I figured I would show you how we have this set up. Hopefully you can hear me with the recess happening, but what we did was we had the sound box here, and then we ended up pulling this out for the fill. And there's a fill and a sub. They get their signal from here. So what's nice is you can plug directly into this, and then we used their speakers, so it was coming from the top ones to play our sound. We didn't use the subs because we didn't want to do all of them. And then we have the plugs right here, so it works out really well. And I'll show you the back and how it kind of all connects in the auditorium. So the way that this works is that normally this is set up so this cable goes down, it plugs into that spot down there. That spot down there is run probably underground and then is sent up to the sound booth up there. What we did so that I could be up there running the projector and the lights and playing the sound. And then we had Mrs. Downing's husband running, mixing the sound down here. So what happens is normally the sound just comes from up there, sent through underground to this spot, and then it is sent to the speakers that way. But what's nice about this is we can kind of disrupt that. So this, we would unplug, we unplugged that and we plugged this fill into the speaker, into our sound system. And then we plugged in our like aux, into an aux basically. I think he used track 7 on the mixer just to have it on there easily accessible, but plug that into that spot, and then it would be sent out through, just plug these into our sound system so that it's sent into the these speakers instead of our speakers, because these were easier to use. If you're going to use them at all, you have to turn them on. So even if you're going to use the church's sound system, they need to be turned on to be used, and they are all off, just as a base. The other thing that they have at least set up right now is all of these spots. So if you really want to use their system and they were okay with it, you can see how they're all labeled. These will cross apply with their soundboard up there. So if you're desperate for something where you're using their sound system, you could plug into these and it would show up on their soundboard. One of the big things that I do with the stage is that before I mess with it, I take a picture of it so that I can set up exactly how the church had it. That way, if we're borrowing their space, we're respectful of it and making sure that it gets back how it was, and not something weird that they have to deal with like last minute. Alrighty, so this is the view from up in this sound booth. To get up here, you need the key to unlock all the doors. This is Amy's key, it's the gold one. It unlocks the bottom door and then also this door. This door is locked. It says alarmed area, but there's no alarm. So, and then what we have up here is very useful, but also a little overwhelming if you don't know how to use it. I'll start over here. So this is the soundboard and the sound system. So all of these speakers are off, which is good. And then you can also see this is the cover, so we can take this off. I'll take that off right now. So if I were gonna turn this on, first thing I would do is I would go down there and turn on those speakers. And then I would make sure that this is all the way down. Because this is the main volume and it needs to be all the way down for you to turn on the system. The way that works is you just press this little power button, bada bing, bada boom. You'll see some flashy lights. All of this will go on. The biggest thing with this is we pretty much will never use it. And if we do, it's as simple as like borrowing one of their wireless mics and only touching that part of the sound system. So I'll show you the layout of it just so you can know. And then outside of that, we really don't want to touch what they have set up because they have presets, they have EQs, they have a bunch of things that make this nice for their Sundays. And without the church's permission, it would be very invasive and probably hard to reset back to what they have already done. So what you can see here, if you are going to be using it, they have drums and all of these will move, which is fun. aux and headset, it's kind of faded. So if you were playing music through the aux cord, which is all the way over there, but that would be in this set. And you can see that all the names change. And then voice and instrument. So here, so with Vox and instrument, and then if you go all the way up here, you can see handheld 1, handheld 2, and these are just kind of here. If we were to turn on one of the handheld mics that are over there, that would be sent to here. Currently, you can see they are muted, so I could unmute them and mute them. Pretty simple. And then even if you unmute them and turn them up, this volume has to go up for any sound to be sent to the speakers. So if you're like, why isn't it working? There's kind of a, the way that it works is to prevent something from accidentally playing. You have to be really, you have to unmute and then unmute to do both. If you go into headsets, these headsets that were down there would probably be right here. So everything's labeled, and that makes it really easy to see how to use this. The other thing that is important to know is that over here, there is an aux cord that goes, it's plugged in all the way back there, and it goes, and it is over here. So this aux cord, if you plug into it, it will play sound, and it will go to, I think, aux 1 is what I'm assuming. So when you unmute it, it would just be able to play whatever sound through that. So you can play music. If you're playing videos, you would plug your, HDMI into your computer and this system, and then turn it up with the speakers on, and voila, you have a whole thing. The other thing that's important, so this is kind of what we did in our box. You can see that there's back here, there's these two. So this one goes to the subs and this one goes to the fill. These are the two lines that go all the way down over there and over there. I think it splits. I'm not 100% sure. But what we did was we unplugged one of these, used our aux to XLR adapter and plugged in that, and then plugged it into the computer so it would send the sound down there and bypass this board entirely to use our mics instead of theirs. So that's what we did. The big thing is to know that if you're unplugging one of these, it has to go back exactly into the same one. And I'll give you a little view here just so you can see how it all goes. If they change it as a church, then that's up to them, but realistically, we're barely touching this board. Maybe using it for wireless headphones, but without their permission, I wouldn't recommend much more than that. So that's the board. Moving on, we have the projector. It's pretty simple. This is an HDMI, and currently it goes to a USB-C, which for me as a Mac user works out great. But if your computer just has HDMI, back here, there is a bin and it has an extra HDMI, or you can borrow one from another spot. So lots of things here. It's pretty simple to use. You just turn it on and it will project over there. So, and then it will just show it's set up. So that's all that you need to do for that. The other thing is these lights. So this big switch operates those LEDs, which is really convenient. Outside of that, we have these lights. So this is kind of like if it were kind of a mirror image of that, to where you have all these faders. They control different things, but you also have a master. So this is the master light operation over here. So down and up is just this. And then what's nice is this is how it's set up normally. So if you need to reference back. But if I turn this on, I can also take all 4 of these down, and it takes down the house lights. They split it into sections, so you can kind of see how that's like the front, this is the back ones, and then this would be the side ones. So they're all together. And then depending on your needs, what's nice is this lighting is very nice. So for events, for things like that, it's kind of nice to be able to access this and see. You can even just have this lighting and turn down the stage lights and have a really nice little spotlight. So lots and lots of options here with how you can do the lighting. Yeah. All right, last thing over here, this is the stream feed. I've never used this. If you turn this on, it will just copy that, which is kind of set up really nice. I've never used it. So yeah. And then I think that this is a DVD player. So if you really wanted to, you could probably play some DVDs up here and have a little movie night. I know that we've done that for the school, so it would almost be really nice to have it played on the projector instead of, a TV or something. I don't know how we've done it before. I've never been, but that is an option as well. So for me, leaving this area, I make sure that obviously the lights are off, that they're put back how they're supposed to be, that the projector is off, that same plug is plugged in if you switched it out, that all the speakers are off, and that this sound system is turned completely off, and that if it's set exactly back to the same way that it was when you found it. So make sure that the volume stays off all the way, and then turn off the power, and the board will turn off as everything slowly dims down. So there you go. And then turn off the lights, close this door, make sure it's locked, close the other door, make sure it's locked, and you're all good.